What's up out there, Mystical Illuminations family? Hope you're all having an excellent weekend. So, I decided to go ahead and do a little dive into just the energy of this Scorpio full moon we're pulling into. This will be a mix of intuitive channeling, just tapping into the cosmic frequencies and things like that directly into the stars and the planets, and of course, my innermost as well, and then also just the transits that we're going to have going on here. I have a bunch of notes, going to kind of tune into that a little bit, and we're just going to kind of see where it goes, because I do feel like this is going to be a really powerful and transformative full moon cycle in terms of this year, especially with the aspects we have going on to Saturn. Definitely, we have a vibe of potential big shift in direction, a kind of the idea of some sort of dharmic, karmic, fated, destined choice or shift in this transformation that we're going through. So I just wanted kind of to tap into everything and share what's coming in with you all, kind of mix it. There'll be definitely some mix in there from things I've already been touching on in previous videos, and of course the monthly newsletter as well. So, yeah, I hope this finds you well. If there's something you don't resonate with, of course, just leave it and move on, because I am definitely tapping into some psychic intuitive channeling in all of this as well. So, for starters, this is a Scorpio full moon, and whenever we have Scorpio in the mix, we are definitely going to have some transformation of inner shadow material, outer shadow material. In particular, and this one's going to be super important because we've got a stellium going on in Taurus opposing this full moon in Scorpio. And, this axis that we have going on here with Scorpio, it comes also at the same time we have a shift in the nodal codes. So, in human design, gene keys, those systems, the codes, the genetic codes that are related to the 64 codons of the I Ching are all spread around the zodiac. And actually, today, as we're making this message, we are shifting over from one set of codes to another, which will be in for the next couple months at least, because it takes quite a while for them to go through all of the points in each of those degrees of the zodiac, which correspond to these codes. And so we're going through that shift. Actually, it's yesterday. Technically, yesterday we shifted over later in the day, and so we're feeling a whole new energy around that. And this nodal axis, I'm actually having my nodal return right now, so I'm super familiar with how the expression of these nodes, south node in Sag, north node in Gemini. And this nodal expression, of course, the nodes have to do with the overall energy and directional flow for the collective, is the kind of top and bottom of that torus, that energetic toroidal field that we have in our system. And this is that toroidal field, that energetic flow for the collective as a whole. And a lot of this has to do with, taking those different experiences we've had in our life, whether that is our beliefs, our philosophies, our travels, our journeys, our spiritual journeys, our physical journeys all over the planet. Um, and in particular, this has to do with the evolutionary leaps that we've made in our beliefs about ourselves and our philosophies and our understanding, that wisdom we've accrued in our lives. Those evolutionary leaps that take place that happen bit by bit. It's interesting because Sag is, of course, a sign that's really about huge concepts, these big philosophies and things like that. But in order for self actualization to take place, in order for wisdom to amass, there actually has to be, gradual, there has to be a lot of focus, and there has to be kind of like a methodical, leap in understanding And these leaps, they do create this overall picture that really is about uh, an invincibility in a lot of ways that we can come to when we start to see that each and every action that we take is playing a part in a really huge picture of who we're becoming, right? When each and everything that we do becomes like this small amount of energy, this ceremony that builds into this large identity, right? This overall collective philosophy and wisdom that we've been accruing throughout our lives. And we're shedding different things around those things that we think we have learned right now at that south node there. We're shedding our beliefs and understandings that we've made maybe accrued that aren't serving us anymore, that are filled with pride or that have ego involved, that really limit us from deeper connection with people, right? Because that North Node in Gemini is all about connection and the enthusiasm, right? This North Node all access is about mastery. It's really about mastery through what we are enthusiastic about, the skills that we accrue in coming up with, focusing on those skills and actualizing what we've learned in a skill set of mastery to connect with people, to share with them, and to give to them and connect with them and share what we've learned in an interesting way, by also being able to connect with them, to feel into them, to feel into what it is that they need, right? Because those philosophies and those different things that we accrue over time about ourselves and about the way the world works, none of that is really important if it's not needed, right? If we connect with somebody, are we just sharing a bunch of information about what we've learned about, this prideful place that we have within? Or we just or are we cutting ourselves off based on these things that we know? Or are we connecting and seeing where this person is at and feeling into and kind of drawing out of them who they are and where they're at, and then applying what we're enthusiastic about? This same way in the world in general, right? We look at the world, where we're going, and it's about a balance of what it is that we want to share, what it is that we want to give, that we are stoked about, that we are mastering, right? And also what is being asked. And so there's a lot of this that is going to be kind of coming into play over the next few months. In particular, though, with this full moon, and when I talk about this full moon, of course, we're only a couple days away, but as you guys know, the imprint, the blueprint of the full moon, it influences the next cycle until the next full moon. So this whole imprint is something, a process that's going to be transforming and evolving over the next 30 days when we have our next full moon. And so this full moon is really a lot about taking a look within, taking a look at our lives, really starting to go within, because we are going to be starting to get into some retrogrades over the next 30 days here, especially the big one, Pluto, is going to be going retrograde, and Pluto is, of course, the evolutionary ruler of Scorpio. And so with Pluto about to go retrograde, this full moon will influence that entire Pluto retrograde cycle. And so this is about a big transformation of coming into our power, in particular around what it is that we are willing to fight for, what is worth fighting for. And in particular, this has a lot to do with coming to an understanding that this connection to our inner child, this connection with our innermost, our Father, Mother, God source within, that light and that connection to that light is really, at the end of the day, the only thing worth fighting for. Now, I know at surface level that may seem a little bit selfish, or something, right? Because this is a part of this full moon too, is coming to a deeper understanding of what selfishness is. And what's really important to understand about this is what I'm talking about is a place within that is actually absolutely selfless, right? But we're not talking about selfless in a way that just goes off just kind of giving from a place of woundedness, right? And this is what's important to understand is, are those things that we're fighting for, that we're willing to die for, that we're willing to give anything for, are they coming from a place based on shadow, right? Or based on trauma, based on programming, based on conditioning? Or are they coming from that connection? And that connection that we have within is what will fulfill all our desires, all our wants, all our needs. It is what will fill us with a bliss and connection to the highest and utmost realms, those deepest places of authenticity within ourselves, the farthest reaches of the cosmos. Right? It is that connection that is completely selfless, right? It is our unique connection to selflessness because it is that place that's tapped into the whole. And that place is got to by healing our connection with our inner child, with that beautiful source of light and love within us that oftentimes, throughout our lives we may have abandoned due to different situations that have come in, through painful situations, traumatic situations, and things like that. But what I can tell you is that those things that happened to you that you may have out of free will choice, because you as a co-creator have the free will choice to disconnect from that voice, that still small voice, and that connection to creator within, you never lose it, right? But we can kind of trick ourselves or mask, or the pain can kind of cover up those layers of trauma and programming and conditioning, can kind of trick us into forgetting about that connection within. And then what happens is, through those layers, through that density, that distortion, then we begin to fight for those identities, those smaller fragmented aspects of self. Those aspects start to kind of bubble up through the surface, and then all of that energy, really what it is signs, is showing us, these triggers are showing us signs of where we've given power away, where we're not connected to Father, Mother, God, Source within, is kind of this place within us saying, hey, no, remember, fight for me, fight for that connection, because you've given away aspects of yourself. And really, when you incarnated, there was a part of you that was here to shift something, to change something, to evolve something on the planet. And there was part of you that was so strong and so powerful that you knew without a shadow of a doubt that you would reconnect to that place, right? Because that place is the utmost in power. It is invincible. It is all powerful. And so there was a part of you that jumped into this and looked at the trauma, the programming, conditioning, different things like that of the genetic lineage that you chose to incarnate into, and said, well, I am the cure to this virus. In being the cure, there is no way that I won't end up breaking down and transmuting and digesting this stuff that's going on. In particular, this full moon has a lot to do with that inner marriage, right? That the self-regeneration that comes through an inner sacred marriage, because this full moon is sextiling to Vesta and Virgo on a specific spot that has to do with the sacred union, the sacred union that happens within us. And this is about, taking that time and that space and aloneness to nurture ourselves, to love ourselves, and do that inner work in a way where we transform what is preventing us from that connection, in a way that we can hear that voice that will of Father, Mother, God, Source within. And this actually, there is a huge, powerful opportunity in this full moon with the resolution to never abandon that place again, to have the resolution and the willpower to align with divine will, to push through and transform forever those things that have hampered our liberation, our total liberation and connection to Father, Mother, God, Source within, which is that thing that can give us that eternal happiness, right? That we can connect with that still point of peace within that will subtly be there. And that's not to say that when we make this connection that all sorts of challenges and difficulties and things like that cease to exist, but it gives us a connection to this eternal subtle connection that's behind all of those things that we can carry with us, that subtly guides us in that. This is the third thing, right? So there's that polarity that happens of good and bad, good and evil, this swinging and spiraling back and forth. That is the tree of good and evil, as I talked about in my last video. And as it says, there's that Bible quote where it says that, we left the Garden of Eden. What's the Garden of Eden? That connection to that place within. The Garden of Eden, which is the tree of life, that eternal life, connection to eternal life that we have within, because that place is what is eternal in us, right? We left that place and went on this journey of going into the mind, trauma programming, conditioning, and went into that journey out of the garden, right where God, Source, was within. And we left that place and got on this spiral of sin, right? What is sin? Sin is the spiral. It is the good and evil, back and forth, back and forth. It's good, it's bad. Really, which has to do with the Eden, the Pingala, that that way of acting in the nervous system, which is fight or flight, right? We get into the trauma programming conditioning, that's fight or flight. And the reptilian brainstem, right? The reptilians, the evil reptilians controlling the earth, which are just our own, it's a mechanism within our body where when we're traumatized, our inner child is traumatized, then that locks our power, right? We give away this power to something external, and then those reptilian aspects of our body keep us locked into that frequency where those traumas are in control of us, right? And then we externalize that when we blindly react to things that come in our field, world leaders, gods, governments, all these different things. They come in and they reflect that point of trauma to us, and then there's this conspiracy, right? There's this conspiracy that things are out to get us, people are out to control us, things are going to destroy us, so on and so forth, right? Of course there's a conspiracy, because you are a microcosm to the macrocosm. So that place within you, that still subtle voice of Father, Mother, God, Source within, is subtly saying, it's orchestrating everything to reflect back to you the experience, to break down the trauma, the shadow, the programming, to reconnect with that Eden within, the Shushumna, which is the third thing, that inner Christ child, right? The Christic Force. The Christic Force is just the spiral force internally. The inward spiraling force is the Christic Force that is trying to bring us back into coherence. Then there's Lucifer, right, which is the externally spiraling force, which convinces us that these things outside of us are what will fulfill us, right? That's the reflection. Christ, this is why Christ in the Bible says, I'm as the morning star. Because, even in this scenario here, I'm in certain ways playing the role of Lucifer for you, because I'm shedding the light on where you can return to the Christic Force within you, right? This is how the whole game works, right? And this is why people like look at things outside of themselves, Elon Musk and different things. Oh, that's the Antichrist. Of course it is. Anything that isn't reconnecting you to that place within of eternal life is the Antichrist. And certain things take on these huge roles of power, right? And when we look at anything as having power over us, we're giving away to that power. Of course, it's going to take the place of the Luciferian agenda, the Antichrist, right? Because when those people, places, or things are coming from that place of keeping that agenda going, especially other people have more trauma programming and conditioning, and especially aren't connected to that place within, and then it also gives them more tendencies to take on that role for us as well too. So it's not just us, but our experience of it is, and then there's different weights and measures of this process taking on in the reality. Now, the next thing that's really important here is, of course, we have this Venus and Mercury conjunction. And this is really what has a lot to do with the potential shift in direction. Okay, because we have this Venus conjunct Mercury and the Black Moon sextile Pallas Athene, and there's a square that is coming up with all of this in Saturn. This is where this karmic directional shift or potential change in direction or kind of choice kind of comes into play, because there's a T-square been in here. But this is this is really about, in the past few days, we had this Venus conjunct Uranus. And this brought in a deep level of heart opening, of reconnecting to that heart of hearts within us, that the ability to connect to that inner child, ideally. And really, Uranus is, as we re-enter the Aquarian age here, Uranus is bringing his electrical force back into his consort Gaia, right? Ancient consort, sacred union lovers, Gaia and Uranus, which is Aeon, the ruler of cosmic time. They're finally reunited as breaking down this old Saturnian karmic cubic matrix, right? The matrix that everybody's stuck in, right? And what is this? This is the matrix of trauma programming conditioning that we talked about, with the reptilians and things like that. It's those bounds, those binds that keep anyone's perception stuck in materialism, in simply materialism, as in, there's nothing more than what I see in front of me. It's also what's keeping power locked in that sort of looking outside for something, especially as we leave the age of Pisces. There's things around the medical industry having power over us, being that God, government, or guru. There's religion. There's all those things of people looking outside to something to lead it, right? Because the Piscean collective needs to be led by God, government, guru, medical industry with Virgo there. We have Virgo in the kind of medical priesthood trying to stay in control as we switch ages, and it's not about the collective anymore and being that, just kind of going along with the herd and conformity and doing what everyone around you does to survive, like the school of fish. This is about that inner sovereignty. This is about unity consciousness, but unity consciousness coming through co-creation, through bliss, tapping into that inner sovereignty. And that inner sovereignty then, like a node, connects you into the collective Christ consciousness, which is this awakening of an organic connection to Gaia and Gaia's connection to the cosmos through Uranus, which is that collective cosmic consciousness. This is really us coming into a galactic consciousness, a galactic society, interdimensionally, right? There are those the Luciferian kind of agenda that is going to be looking to go to the cosmos through these more like external means, and that's great. I'm not saying that there's necessarily anything wrong with that per se, but there is the organic 5D timeline, which is this internal connection to this psychic cosmic consciousness, this unity consciousness that comes within, or there's a unity consciousness that comes by putting a chip in your brain and going that way and tapping into some sort of weird mechanical external force, which, but more power to you if that's what your timeline is. I'm not here to say do one thing or don't do the other. I'm just here more to kind of inform about, where everything is going. Me personally, I'm taking the internal connection and tapping into this organic Gaian galactic consciousness that can move through stargates within our hearts and travel interdimensionally by connecting into nature, right? Because there are ways to travel interdimensionally through portals in nature, through within ourselves. We go into trance and we come into and we can navigate the cosmos. This is why my name is a star interstellar, because I'm starting to master this ability to travel throughout time and space, and coming up with ways to teach others how to do these things as well. It's a remembrance of my lineage in this ability to travel in these ways. And so with this Venus conjunct Mercury, Venus is starting to receive, our feminine aspects are starting to receive these electrical impulses from the cosmos, breaking down these ancient karmic structures. And this is bringing up memory for us. And this is a remembrance of our ability to love ourselves, to care for ourselves, our worth, which are, like I've talked about in my videos, our true worth is unimaginable. We can't even fathom our true worth when we connect to that place within, where we've been, the lifetimes we've been through, that the ability to co-create with Father, Mother, God Source as a child of the cosmos. But this Venus-Mercury conjunction is about aligning our minds and our hearts in a way where we can really receive, where we can be receptive to the way that we can become an instrument of a greater vision for the collective, right? And where we can start to doubt those different things that really aren't serving us anymore. This is about starting to become a receptive vessel to. This is like, let me really tune into this here, because there's something that's kind of wanting to be brought through in this. So there's part of us that may move in certain directions based on where we might be able to be recognized for something. This is, when we come at something through a place of trauma, programming, conditioning, ego, something like that, there's something, there can be a place that's like, well, I need to be recognized for something, right? Like, if I'm going to do this, I need to be recognized for this thing. I need to be You know, hey, look at what I figured out. Look at what I've done. Like, look at, look at me, right? And then there is a place that the true leader, right? The true connection that we have within will move based on receiving that higher will and know that through that connection to that unity consciousness, to the collective, the more that we can be receptive to that, listening to that still voice within, it's like we know that it's not about us being the individual leader and getting recognized. It's that Father, Mother, God source within, the more that we connect with that, this whole thing that we're a part of will recognize us, right? It's because the more that we tap into that place within, this is like a dharmic move, right? Where if we look at ourselves as part of this collective body, when we really tap into that place within, we may not receive that luciferic type of external recognition, right? The ego, the traumatized ego, is what wants that sort of recognition. But this is really about a higher goal into this collective consciousness, that in order for our knowing to be expressed, it can happen in these ways that is just like subtly. It can happen subtly through energy and frequency, right? Like, have you ever been in one of those situations where there's a group of people and there's the leader, there's the recognized leader of the group, right? There's the person that gets the attention as the recognized leader of the group. And then there's another really powerful figure that in a lot of ways almost might even be more of a leader than the actual leader, that can just do something behind the scenes that everyone knows on a subtle level, everyone knows on an energetic level, is holding the glue together for everyone, right? It's the person that just kind of like, takes care of things behind the scenes and comes back into the circle, comes back into the team, and there's just like this deep cellular recognition from everyone. They may not say anything, but they just, and that person, they will get taken care of, because everyone subtly knows, especially the people that are connected into that place. And the more that we make decisions based on that place, that connection, the more that we are open to receive situations where that will be recognized, right? And so this is really important. And with this, with the black moon in here, there's a real transformation of, I'm sorry, not the black moon. Technically, is Lilith. People call it black moon Lilith. I want to distinguish from the other black moon. This is Lilith. There's a real deep transformation of the dark feminine within us, of our feminine, the power that comes in receptivity, right? And where we doubt our ability to receive from Creator, from our inner source, the more that we can tap into that place, the more that we can tap into a true power. And now I see where this is going, because there's a lot of transformation in this full moon cycle, going back, and I talked about this in another video I recently did. As we entered the Aquarian age, there's a lot of transformation and shifts happening, a breaking down of the shadows and trauma from other ages, right? Because we're coming into this Aquarian golden age in order to truly enter into this 5D Aquarian Christic collective consciousness. There has to be a lot of breaking down from these other shifts that have happened as we've went into other ages, because that force, the Christic force, really is this involutionary, evolutionary force that breaks down trauma programming conditioning, that brings us more into coherence and unity and connection. That's really what that force is about, is transmuting those barriers of separation, the shadow material, the trauma material. And so to enter into, we all have this great opportunity as we switch ages, because this force kind of surges as we cross these ages, because this is like a the Christ as a whole is this child, this cosmic child that we're all a cell within the body of. And what happens is we go through these different stages of the growth of this child. We as cells play a part, right? And we awaken to the identity of that larger child, right? But we also are on our own individual path to becoming our own unique creator God child, right? And so when we go through these ages, this is like developmental stages, right? Like there's embryo, and then there's, when the heart develops in the womb, and there's when we exit the womb, there's these special marked stages, and this is what the nodal axes are like. And when we go through those breakdowns of the cellular material for more life force, the Christic life force, to come in, there's this like dropping of the veils. And when there's this dropping of the veils, it gives us this opportunity to make these huge ascension leaps. And so right now, there's this breaking down of Scorpio, Taurus, especially coming through, the age of Taurus that we had. And that age of Taurus, which I talk about, the trauma around this age would a lot have been about, because it would have been a matriarchal age, there would have been, the dark side of the feminine, and where the feminine, not just females, I'm not just talking about females, but the feminine as a whole would have used sexuality as a way to manipulate, as a way to hold power, right? There also would have been a way to use sexuality to ascend, right, into or to come to that connection to God's source within. But there would also have been the shadow of using it when there was shadows, to use it as a manipulative way, using those hooks, right? Like of seeing where people are disconnected from their power, Plutonian power, and using it as a way to hook in and manipulate a person for money, for power, for whatever it is, right? And so those that are really being called to get into the tantric work right now, especially, are being asked to really break down all of those shadows and those traumas around that age, to be gifted once again the power and responsibility, the true empowerment that comes from that connection within, right? Which is reuniting that inner sacred marriage, right? Not just going to that outer marriage, right? Because if we just look for that outer marriage, then there's going to be all that manipulation still that comes along with that. And so this is a huge part of this, is breaking down where those feminine places within us have utilized any sort of jealousy, power, manipulation, the dark sides of Scorpio, to get what the ego wants, to get the ego's desires, rather than transforming and breaking down that material within and knowing that that place within is the only place that can ever fulfill everything that we want. So we come from that place, then we don't have the outer manipulation. It's more of a selfless place of giving an actual true Christic connection to a divine counterpart, a soulmate, or a true twin rave, and not a false false twin flame, right? And all those twin flames, I did talk about this in my last video too, because this is a big topic right now. And really, that can be applied to anything. A false twin flame can be anything that we look for externally for that connection. It's like a drug can be a false twin flame, where we're like looking for, we get some sort of fulfillment out of that connection that can really only come from that place internally to us. And so this is where, the nodes also come into place too, because we have the nodes sextiling Chiron. And so this is really asking for us to not believe the propaganda, and there's so much propaganda right now. And of course, any place where we're gullible to propaganda externally all comes from a place where we are gullible to propaganda that happens internally, right? Because once again, they're looking like, oh, the controllers, like these people controlling all of this stuff. And I'm not saying that any of that stuff is right or correct, or I'm not supporting the manipulation that's being done in the media and things like that right now. But what I can say is the rainbow bridge to this higher consciousness that everyone's looking for, the savior, is internal. And this is it's our ability to look within and say, where is our enthusiasm coming from? A place of wounding, of ego, of like where we're being tricked, right? And that's the same thing going on externally, right? You look at all these media sources right now, and you can tell it's just a lot of, like, if you see a false sense of enthusiasm, right? Like, oh, yay, this is happening over here. Oh, cool. Like, whatever. This is, a sure sign that this comes down to the fact of, people wanting, is the light winning, is the dark winning, right? We look at the media and we can see that there is, there's this false sense of enthusiasm everywhere. And it's a sure sign that, those of us that are on this path and know that the light has already won. Whatever is being depicted, that Christic Force has anchored here, is birthed here. The 5D grid is here. It's just a matter of continuing to tap into that frequency, tap deeper into that self-actualization, and really tap into that new world, right? And when we can tap into that new world, we anchor in that frequency, that collective, that highest and best timeline, right? And that is tapped into when we tap into that place internally to us, and not those places of the false sense of enthusiasm, right? And we also want to look as like, where are we controlling, and where can we tap into that internal authority and really cut out all of the interference to our own healing process, right? And really tap into, like, if there is anything getting in the way of doing what you love based on a true connection to Father, Mother, God Source, then it's time to cut that out, This is a big thing. And these are also things within us, habits, addictions, programs, you know, whatever, media coming in. Stuff's getting in the way and holding you back from that high frequency to that 5D Aquarian timeline in that world. Cut it out, and this is time to do that. It is time to exercise that place within you that knows that your whole healing process, your healing journey that you've been on is it's time to shine and to bring that to the table. And that's what the world needs, and that's what the world is asking for. And this is what it's all been in preparation for, is for you to bring your unique medicine to the world in a way that you can shine, right? And don't listen to all of that stuff that's coming in, because it's just a reflection pulling you back into that deepest connection of your heart at hearts, right? Those That's when the greatest amount of crap comes in from the external place, is when you're the closest to connecting to that true heart of hearts, because it's is reflecting back how much power it takes to go into that inner child and reconnect to that force of magic that is what has the ability to change all of this. And this also has a lot to do with really attuning to there are things that are going to be happening over the course of the next month that are really about a serendipity. The more that we can connect to that place within, the more that we are aligned magically, spiritually, to a place, to the exact time and moment where we can receive something that can only be attributed to or given the name of grace, right? When we get out of the way, when our shadow, our trauma, our programming, our conditioning gets out of the way, then we can open up to the visions, to it. When we make that marriage within us, that's when everything that we want and need, we've ever been looking for, shows up for us. And that happens through grace. That it happens through becoming a vessel to that coming into us. And lastly, Jupiter, we have this Jupiter sextile series. And what this is really about is our ability to accept guidance in this process of connecting to our innocence as a divine child. There is wisdom available to us. There is unconditional love available to us when we really take a look at where we may have been withholding, angry and withholding, based on those darker feminine wounds within us. Because Ceres has a lot to do with where there was the original breakdown and destruction of the original Gaian planet, right? This is like, this one name for this planet is Tara, right? Which is the new Earth that we are reconnecting to, right? Because what happened was there was this massive disaster, and there was a breakdown. And this is why we have the asteroid belt. This is why we have these leftover pieces. And this breakdown caused us to disconnect in fear from our true innocence. And this is the ancient stuff that's being transmuted and transformed at this time. And a lot of this has to do with, for many people, because this is a big thing that's been coming in lately, this breakup of our connection to Tara, right? Which is this galactic 5D consciousness of the Divine Mother, and came into a 3D Saturnian cubic time matrix, just related to Gaia. We have the limitations is based on matter, right? And then we have Tara, which is a reconnection to a timeline that is fully reconnected to cosmic consciousness. And for a lot of people, where this breakdown happened was in exiting the womb, and there was a premature cut of the umbilical cord with the mother, right? And this has been something that's come up in a ton of my sessions lately, where ideally when a child comes out of the womb, there is a subtle recognition between the mother and the child, right? And this is how the child really learns and keeps a hold of that language, that still small voice within that I'm talking about, that connection to Father, Mother, God, Source within. There is a language that is beyond languages. A lot of mothers know this well. And ideally, in a birth scenario, the mother is connected to the child and asks that child, are you ready to have the umbilical cord cut? And the child will message the mother in a language that is so subtle, as like a whisper, because they're both connected to, they're deeply connected with one another, but ideally they're also connected to that subtle realm, that voice, and how it speaks within. And when that umbilical cord is preemptively cut without that recognition, then there's a disconnection that can happen, a deep sense of ancient betrayal that can happen, because there's a feeling of betrayal from the mother. And then there's that child, that disconnection has to be healed in a reconnection to the Divine Mother made, in order to really have that sense of like, oh, this is a benevolent universe. This is a benevolent, like everything is working in my favor, that connection to that cosmic consciousness, right? And so this is a lot of what that's about too. And this is also has a relation to, where are we unwilling to accept guidance? Where are we angry or withholding of our love and unwilling to accept guidance because there's that deep breakdown, that deep betrayal or something like this? Right now, there is the ability to transform and transcend those wounds and to really reconnect to that place of innocence and knowing that we are a child of the divine. And through our unique connection to that unique source, that Father, Mother, God source within, we can bring this magic and co-create with the cosmos, with the collective, with the divine, in a really very beautiful way. And I also want to say it's also important to understand that we want to make sure that we're not burning ourselves out right now. This is a transit too that has to do with making sure that we are burning ourselves out based on trauma programming conditioning. Really giving ourselves that nurturance, that self-care to care for that inner child. And if there is something getting burnt out, what it should be right now is anything that's in the way of that connection to that divine child, that inner sacred marriage. And this is how we reconnect to that place of unconditional love. We don't connect to a place of unconditional love by looking for unconditional love. And this is the last thing, this huge square, because this is where this karmic stuff comes into place. And this is where, and I don't know how long I've been going here, but I know I've been going long time. But it's also the perfect amount of time. So this square is the last thing that I needed to touch on. You know, we have that Venus conjunct Mercury, conjunct Black Moon, sextile Pallas Athene. And this square is important. This is where that shift in direction is made. And Saturn's position has a lot to do with where are we if we look at where we exile ourselves from our own connection to love, to self-care, to that beauty within, to those waves of beauty, when we're connected to that Father, Mother, God source within, it's just there waiting for us. We just have to be willing to open up to it more, and to allow it to come from within us. And when it comes from within us, then it starts to magnetically draw in those things externally to us, the exact situations, the people, the connections that we're looking for. Because it's that reconnection to that place within that then attracts that world, right? And this is we may need to avoid people and situations and connections and things that exacerbate our ego consciousness, our trauma consciousness, right? It can be healthy for us to take periods to recluse, to reconnect to that place within that actually is what gives us the connection to everything, that interdependence of the cosmic web, right? Once we've established that true connection internally, this is, you know, are we taking time to ourselves because we're sulking like a child, and we're just like, no, I'm gonna go over here in the corner until somebody comes and gets me and loves me and connects to me and makes me feel okay and soothes me, right? Or are we going to that place within and connecting and doing that work on ourselves to feel that amazing interconnectivity, and then allowing others to come to us because they're seeking that frequency? And this is about being receptive to what direction is more in alignment with our true soul's path, and having that connection and making directional shifts based on that connection, as opposed to that ego-based external consciousness that looks for that love and that satisfaction, that connection externally. This is the biggest thing of this, is where we're shifting based on that connection within, and how that completely changes the course of the entire planet, because that changes our timeline. We are in a multiverse, and when we make the choice to connect to that timeline, we literally connect to a version of the planet that is that timeline. And then because we have that connection, we know we don't have to worry about all of the bullshit that's coming in through all these external sources trying to convince it, because those things don't have power over us anymore. So we connect to that highest 5D ascension timeline by connecting to Father, Mother, God, Source within, and then we connect to a timeline of Tara, Gaia, the original planet, that will be this golden age. And that's why this full moon is important, is because it's about, and it's you can't make a wrong choice. I'm not saying any of this to say it's about making a wrong or right choice. But at the end of the day, what this is really about is connecting to that inner marriage, that place within, and no matter what happens, you have that connection. You are invincible. You are internal based on that connection, and that place always has your back and will always lead you to the right place, because that's heaven within. It's heaven on earth. It's heaven within you, and that is what is available to you. Thank you so much for tuning into this special message. I really appreciate all of you. If this has been helpful for you, if you've liked any of this, go ahead and smash up the like button for me. Really bring up this on the algorithm. And if you need a session, I have the links down below. Follow me on social media. I really deeply love all of you. I really appreciate you all tuning in, and have a beautiful full moon and the rest of your Taurus season.